What's up everybody, welcome to the channel. In today's video we're going to be talking about the Nova M92FS INOX kit, which is designed for the Tokyo Marui M9A1. We're going to be going through the build, any problems we encountered and any fixes we did to overcome each problem. Thank you very much for watching and I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so today's video is about talking about the installation of this kit, any problems we encountered and all the fixes that we're going to show you. So any of you guys out there who are thinking of doing this build, installing a Nova kit, you know, Nova M92FS INOX kit, then maybe, or any of the other variants, then maybe this information will help you, okay? We're going to get right into it. Right, let me just remove the magazine, remove the slide. And if you're wondering, if you want a close-up of this kit, check out our other video on the channel. We've done a close-up of the kit before everything's installed. We've also done a video of the disassembly of the Tokyo Marui M9A1, which may help you if you are servicing, replacing parts, or just upgrading something, you know, or it may even help you with this install. Okay, so with this slide, we'd like to say everything went in perfectly. There were no major issues. But one thing that was did strike us as kind of as weird was when we was installing this bar here. There's two screws that hold it in place. There's one screw here and one screw here. These are very, very small, and you get 3 in the pack, but you only need to use 2, which we found kind of strange. It turns out one was a spare, and I think Nova was thinking clearly when they did this. They didn't just think, oh, these screws are kind of crappy, we'll give you a spare one in case you break it. They specifically used screws that I guess can break under too much torsion or too much stress. And that's exactly what happened. When you install this, I guess if you install it with too much pressure, it could damage the slide. So what they did was use screws that are rated correctly for the install, I should say. And as I was installing it quite harshly, trying to make sure I was getting this this black bar piece here to bite down correctly, I was using too much stress, and what I did was destroy one of the small screws. We then noticed you have to install it very, very carefully, okay? Use the correct amount of force and don't overdo it. It just needs to be comfortably tight, nothing more, okay? So it's lucky that they thought of that, gave us a spare one. So we were very careful and we installed these 2 screws. That's the only note that we needed to do. There's also some other parts which we upgraded or changed over to, different companies' parts. Aftermarket parts. There's not a great variety of aftermarket parts for the which variant was it? M9A1, sorry. But the parts that we did find we'll install. We'll talk about them in a minute. But at the moment, we'll talk about everything that we needed to do extra, okay? Obviously none of the coloring markings were installed. The rear sight's not installed yet. I'm going to show you how I'm going to install that in a minute. This red part here, you can see this is actually paint. It doesn't come painted in, so you need to do that yourself. It's a bit like a modeler's kit, which I really, really enjoy. It's one of the things I really like about Nova kits. You know, there's a lot of things you need to do yourself and piece together, and it's quite enjoyable. For us anyway. And the front sight there, I just painted it in with some modeler's red paint, permanent red paint. The fire selector or the safety marking or the live marking, whatever you want to call it, is painted in red by me as well. Okay, right, I'll show you the rear sight and what you have to do to install that. Now, one thing I do not like about this kit is the rear sight is just held in, well, just slides in really. What you do is you need to move this part here, which is the rear portion of the nozzle. Okay, so I'll just you should really take it all apart. Okay, this should be the first thing you install on the slide, but we didn't really think ahead, and this way we get to show you anyway. Okay, so what we're going to do is when the rear portion of this nozzle part moves out forward or out of the way, or if you uninstall everything, this rear sight can then slot in, okay, from either side. You can slot it in one way. You can see that where there's that rounded part there, that's to allow the air nozzle to go through. Okay, so obviously it's in a way now, so we can't install it. We need to disassemble everything. Okay, but the thing is, it is so smooth, there's nothing holding it in. It can just fall out the rear. Okay, so what we're going to do okay, is we're actually going to score this bar here. We're going to leave a large score mark here and a large score mark here. We're going to probably use I don't know, a tool to do that on both sides, and we're also going to do that on the underside of the rear sight as well. We're going to leave two very well, not very, two deep indentations on both sides, and we are literally going to epoxy these in, okay? So when everything's disassembled, we're going to put some epoxy mix on these scored parts here with the markings. We're going to slide it in, and when the glue sets, it's going to bite into the score marks that we make and the indentations and hold everything in place. When you do this, you want to make sure there is no glue on the crevice there, okay, the curvature on both sides. You literally just want to make sure the epoxy is on either side of the rear sight and the slide, okay, and make sure that it is aligned correctly, okay. It needs to be aligned perfectly, otherwise your sights are going to be off. Okay, looking at the rear sight here, a lot of people don't know what kind of sights it comes with, whether it's the 2-dot or half-dot moon. It comes with both, okay. The you have a crevice here, which is, I guess, like a half-dot, half-moon kind of thing, and 2 dots here. Now you get to select which ones you use. We went for the 2 dots and just filled those two in, but you can do the bottom one there, which gives you the dot above half a dot kind of thing. Okay, so we've just finished scoring the area where the sight slides into. You can see that there's some very, very deep scoring marks there. That's going to allow the epoxy to have something to bite into, as opposed to a very smooth surface. We've done the same with the underside here of the rear sight, okay. Try and go on as deep as possible, keeping relatively close to the inside, again, to allow the epoxy to have something to bite onto. Okay, once you're happy with the scoring, basically you just slide the sight on, the rear sight on in the correct orientation, like so. We're going to put it on halfway like this. Then we're going to apply epoxy to this part here, which is the actual sight, and this part here, just a tiny little drop, and then slide it on, okay? Once you slide it on, it should push some of the epoxy out. Then you just wipe down the excess. You might get some excess on this part here and a little bit on the actual slide. Before it dries, you just quickly wipe it off and make sure it's completely clean. Turn it back over, and then try and align the sight as straight as you can. Once you've done that and you're happy with the alignment of the sight, make sure you let the epoxy fully cure before you attempt to move it, okay? Now let's start talking about the frame. This is where most of the work had to be done, and there is quite a bit of work to be done, okay? First of all, let's talk about the magazine catch. The magazine catch obviously acts as like a spring-loaded part, which basically moves out or in. If the magazine inserts, the magazine is angled obviously, so it will push it out the way, and when it goes into its crevice, it springs back, locking the magazine in, okay? So it's kind of like this. It's like a mechanism there, just spring-loaded. Magazine moves it out of the way. Eventually, when it gets to that crevice, it's going to lock in place, and when you release it, it releases, okay? Now, the problem with this is when we were inserting the magazine, the angle of the magazine was so steep for the mag catch, because it was installed in this kit. It was very, very difficult to insert the magazine compared to standard, I guess. You know, when you insert the standard one, it's just easy. You just tap it in and it's locked in place. With this one, we noticed that some magazines were slightly easier to put in, and some magazines were incredibly difficult, almost impossible to allow the mag catch to catch on. And we had a look, and it was because of this. Now, if we zoom in here, I'd like to draw your attention to this part of the magazine here. Now, if you look very closely, these are 3 standard Tokyo Marui M9 magazines. If you look here, there's a very sharp, very steep gradient there. On here, also quite sharp, also quite steep. But if you look over here, this part is not as sharp. It is kind of rounded, okay? So it's kind of smooth. There's a smooth transition between the slope and the end there, okay, where it reaches its final, fattest point, I should say. So when this magazine loads in, it goes in very, very smoothly. It goes in like butter, just locks in place, no problem. This one, however, gets quite difficult here. You know, it feels like it's scratching against to metal. It feels like metal binding against metal, okay? And this one was almost impossible. We would just, you know, not go in. It'd be really, really difficult to engage the mag catch. So what we did was we just angled the slight gradient that was on the mag catch there. Let's see if we can see it here. There is the mag catch part there. You see that is the most aggressive part, the top of the magazine catch there. What we did was we just increased the slope. Okay, so the mag catch is normally like that. What we did was just sanded this part down until the angle was slightly gentler. Okay, so it's not so aggressive, so that the magazines could go in. This led us to believe that I don't know, maybe it's the process that Tokyo Marui uses to make their magazines. Not all magazines are equal. In fact, they are all completely different in size and in shape, I guess. Okay, which leads us to the next problem. Since the kit is made out of metal, the magazines being different sizes, it's gonna cause problems because obviously, as we have proven, they're in different shapes. Some magazines are slim, slightly slimmer, some magazines are slightly fatter, and some of them are incredibly fat. This means the magwell is gonna have a hard time, you know, with certain magazines. Some are gonna just go in really, really easily and be slightly loose. Some are gonna fit perfectly, and some are just not gonna go in whatsoever. Our first magazine went in with a little bit of trouble. Okay, our first, I believe it was this one with the gentle gradient on the top there. It went in with a little bit of problems, but it still fit inside. The next one just didn't want to go in. The third one was impossible to get in, and the fourth one was absolutely no go. It was, in fact, this one here with no go written on it was so fat it would not go in at all. It would just jam really, really tightly. Okay, so what we had to do was sand down some material. Okay, we had to take down, this took us hours, very gently sanding down this wall here, the back wall here, taking out the most of the material from the insert portion there, which is attached to the frame, and also this part here. Okay, now this part took a lot of material. Okay, we needed a Dremel for this. It needed to be taken down quite a lot in order for it to fit. Now you'll get to a problem where you'll have medium-sized magazines that fit great, slim-sized magazines. These are all the same magazines, just in case you get confused. These are all the same magazines, it's just they're slightly different sizes in diameter. Okay, you get the fat ones which will not go in, the medium ones which will fit perfectly once you've sanded enough, and the slim ones which would be a little bit loose in there because you've taken some material away. The problem is, if you want to make all your magazines fit, including the fat ones, you're gonna have to take off so much material away that the slightly slimmer magazines are just gonna be too loose inside. So what we did was we went with kind of the medium sized and the slim sized, and we just left the fat ones out. Okay, so just to show you guys, we've got this one here which is slim, fits in no problem. Okay, ejects no problem. This one is slightly fatter, so it's medium, also goes in, releases no problems. I believe this is the fattest one we've got, which goes in also, releases no problems. And we've got the no-go here, which is so fat, we've decided just to leave it out. It's not included. Okay, it'll get to there and that's it. Okay, it's not going to go in anymore. Okay, so that leaves you with the dilemma of what kind of magazines do I have. Well, it really depends. If you have lots and lots of, let's say if you have 5 fat ones and 1 slim one, just remove material until all the fat ones fit, and then leave the slim one out. If you have all slimline magazines, that's great. That's not much work that needs to be done with removal of material. If they're mostly a mix of everything, then you're going to have to make a sacrifice. If you go with the fat ones, the slim ones more than likely will not fit in, or will fit in, but will be very, very loose. This may cause issues such as the mag catch not engaging properly, the magazine wobbling inside the magwell, and possibly gas route to nozzle fitment issues where it may leak a bit of gas. Okay, so your gas seal may suffer a little bit, but that's a compromise you have to make. That is why this kit did lose a few points in our eyes due to things like this. It's not really the kit's fault. The kit has done so well. It's precision made, I guess. It's very, very nice. The finish is perfect. In fact, we've done a little review of the unboxing of this kit, so you can go check that out if you guys like. The problem is with the Tokyo Marui magazines. Now, this can also not be called a problem, so we're in the middle of something here, because Tokyo Marui magazines are great. They don't leak, they hold their gas, they're very consistent, and they fit in all of their original Tokyo Marui guns, obviously. So Tokyo Marui made a great job in making these magazines. Nova also made a really good job in making this kit. I'm very, very impressed with the finish, the quality and everything it comes with. The only problem is these two mating together, there's a slight hiccup, slight issue. Nothing that would cause it to be inoperable. It works, you know, it's just obviously this may be something to note for you guys, okay? The next modification I'd like to draw your attention to that you need to do is to the original Tokyo Marui lanyard mount, okay? Let me just take off this grip panel and the weight, and that is to do with this pin here, okay? I'm just going to remove this pin to show you. Okay, I'm just going to hold my thumb here as I punch this this retaining pin out because the hammer spring is in there and it's going to push this part out and make it fly off. Okay, I've already punched it out, so I'm just going to pull it out here. If you look here, that's the hammer spring up there. I'm not going to take that out. This hole here was slightly in a, not awkward I should say, but it was in a slightly misaligned position compared to the holes on the kit. So all I did was put a Dremel piece in there and drill it out slightly. Okay, I widened the hole in there. That was to allow it to the pin to have good clearance through there. After you do that, there should be no problem. Okay, it's just when you install this as it is, obviously the kit's slightly different to the original Tokyo Marui parts, so it's kind of misaligned. So all you have to do is widen the hole on this. Okay, don't drill the actual kit. Drill through the original Tokyo Marui lanyard part. Okay. And that's pretty much it for all the problems that we encountered during this build. So now let's talk about all the upgrade parts. This is the fun part, okay? So the kit did require a lot of sanding, obviously, because we're not going to fit a tool inside the magwell. We're going to sand it with a small sanding block by hand, which may take a lot of time, which it did for us. You know, so if you want to undergo this kind of work, it's up to you. Now, everything fit in perfectly, okay? Everything in here is mostly standard Tokyo Marui parts, but we're going to go over all the parts that we did change over. Okay, the frame, as you can see, the internal frame and the rear part of the internal frame there, everything fit in perfectly. You know, usually there's work that needs to be done usually on every single component, but that's not the case with this. It's just the magwell that takes quite a lot of work, okay? Everything else pretty much works as it should. You know, it functions great, and we were very, very happy with the result. Okay, so now let's talk about all the upgrade parts. So with a bit of experimentation, we have found what we believe is the perfect combination of parts to keep this running crisp, nice and quickly, and keeps the cycling perfect. Okay, so the first thing we did was, as you can see here, if you look inside the barrel there, you can see that the internal barrel is no longer gold. In fact, you can't even see it anymore. It's black. Now, we specifically wanted this inner barrel. It's made by PDI. It's their 6.01mm tight bore barrel made with a calcinite coating, I believe. I'm not sure if that's a coating or if that's a material, whatever. It's the inner barrel for the Tokyo Marui M9A1 now. We didn't do this, we didn't get this barrel specifically for any reason like, I don't know, FPS increase maybe, or tighter groupings. We specifically got this inner barrel because we wanted it to look as realistic as possible, where possible, and so we went for the black inner barrel. We're very happy about that. You can't see the gold anymore, okay? Now, obviously, as the slide is now made of metal, the cycling is going to be very, very sluggish on the standard spring. Tokyo Marui standard springs are incredibly weak, obviously because they don't, to improve efficiency, of course, and because the slide is made of, the original slide is made of plastic, it doesn't need to be very strong. So what we tried first of all was the short stroke recoil spring guide set for Tokyo Marui M9A1 by Laylax, also known as 9-ball, I guess. But this spring was just not strong enough. Okay, it was still very sluggish with this spring installed. But we did, it did come with some of these short stroking units buffers, which we used. We used the long plastic one, as you can see here. What that does is that decreases the space, okay, so decreases the cycling distance of the slide, enabling it to just travel a shorter distance and have a slightly quicker cycling time. Okay, now the spring was so weak, so we didn't use that. We did buy it just to try out, but unfortunately it didn't do the job, so what we needed was a slightly stronger spring. Now we then went to a we couldn't find a spring for it, so we went for the Garda's 150% hammer spring and 150% recoil spring. Okay, now this was designed for the Tokyo Marui M9. I believe it was the variants before this variation, the M9A1. So the hammer spring doesn't fit. Okay, it's completely different and a completely different size. But we bought this just for the recoil spring. Okay, so it's got a 150% recoil spring in there, made by Garda, along with the one of the short stroking buffer kits made by 9ball. And that has improved cycling perfectly. It cycles very, very quickly now, as you may have seen at the beginning of the video. Don't worry, we'll be doing more shooting in a minute. So we recommend, if you're going with a metal kit, it's best to go with 150%. Now this will make cycling quicker, but it will decrease your efficiency, okay, your gas efficiency. So if you're in a colder climate, you may want to think twice before using this this pistol. It's not the most efficient. Okay, as we have found, ours tends to like slightly warmer temperatures when we're firing. Okay, it can get a bit slow and sluggish when you're using it in slightly lower temperatures. Okay, the next thing we installed was the Firefly rocket valve, I believe they call it, for the M9A1. Now this is basically, this is the original Tokyo Marui part. The Firefly one is installed, it's there just peeking through that little white piece there. And what this does is direction the gas, whether it goes to control your FPS or it controls your recoil. Okay, so basically it's like a split. It controls how much gas goes to the barrel and how much gas makes you gives you the recoil or the blowback action, so it moves the slide backwards in a sense. Okay, if we have a quick look at these two parts, you can see the left one is the Firefly version, and the one on the right is the Tokyo Marui. If you look at the front part of it, where you see the outlet, or where the gas comes out at the front there, you can see that the Tokyo Marui one is kind of restricted with two straight bars on the side, whereas the Firefly version is actually completely circular. Okay, so obviously it will let more gas out. Okay, and I believe what that does is control give you more FPS, okay, slightly better FPS. It's also apparently made from a slightly harder wearing material. There's no way for us to prove that or test that, so we're just going to go with it. Okay, and the next part that we installed was the Firefly M9A1 recoil guide rod, which is this part here. Seems to be made very well. Now, when we installed this, obviously, as we said, we first tested the 9ball spring. The spring was very, very tight on it. Okay, it looked like it was kind of the recoil guide rod was slightly too fat for the spring, and it was giving it a hard time. Okay, the Garda spring, however, fits perfectly. It's very smooth, seems to be the correct size, and works flawlessly with it. Okay, so highly recommend that. It's made from a really nice material. This front part is not actually metal. The original Tokyo Marui guide rod is metal, but this one is made from some kind of plastic, I believe. I'm not too sure. POM, it says POM. I can't remember the long name for that. Okay, so also the hammer spring that we're using is a 9ball hammer spring. Okay, this one is also stiffer and slightly tougher than the standard Tokyo Marui one. And the reason we're using that is because we're going to be using this probably during the summer. It's mainly going to be a display pistol in a nice cabinet. But when we do use this in slightly warmer climates, the gas is going to be slightly higher pressure, and to prevent light strike, if that's a problem, we're going to not have a problem, because we're going to have this uprated hammer spring. Okay, so I believe that's everything installed. Are there any more parts? Nope, that's it. That's practically it. This is a high output valve, which apparently allows more gas out to give you, I don't know if it's more FPS or higher blowback feel, more recoil in a sense. But we installed it in one of our magazines, tested it, uninstalled it, re-lubed it, retested it, and did everything we could, and it just would not cycle with this output valve. So we can't really, I know it says it's for like Glock and whatever, but it does fit in these magazines perfectly, and it's pretty much the same. But it doesn't work. We're going to stay with these standard Tokyo Marui valves from now on. Okay, so let's get down to an FPS and shooting test. Okay, we're now going to do an FPS test or chrono test. The ambient temperature is 17 degrees Celsius, which is about 62 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to be using green gas for this in a completely standard Tokyo Marui M9 magazine, and the BBs we are using are the Tokyo Marui 0.2 gram perfect hit BBs, okay? Version 2.1 Madball chronograph. Here we go. 313. 313 and 315. Okay, that concludes the FPS test. And while we're here, we may as well dry fire a couple of times for you guys. Okay, this is an empty magazine, nothing in the chamber as I have checked, don't worry. Okay. And that brings us to an end to today's video. Hopefully the information within has helped those of you out there who have purchased this kit and have run into some problems, or if you are considering this kit but are worried about what kind of problems you're going to run into, okay? I know there are a lot of high resolution pictures of this kit online from different retailers, but hopefully with this video you can get an even better view of everything that's included and how everything fits together, and also what she looks like when she's all pieced together, okay? So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.